All right, welcome back to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're about to uncover the sweeping, honestly pretty surprising, and truly fascinating history of a game played by millions. We're tracing the true evolution of golf, tracking its journey from a rough and tumble pastime to a highly engineered global phenomenon. Get ready because the story the data tells us is probably very different from the one you've heard. Now, you might be wondering, was golf always a game for the elite? It's a super common assumption, right? We kind of picture early golf as this slow, quiet game played exclusively by wealthy aristocrats in pristine, tailored clothing. Okay, let's dive into this, because the historical record actually completely debunks that idea. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by busting that aristocratic myth, look at how the game was formalized, track the equipment revolution, highlight some amazing trailblazing women, and finally, look at how golf became a massive global phenomenon. Kicking things off with part 1, busting the aristocratic myth, and the true grassroots origins of the game. So, back in the 1800s, historians kind of rewrote golf's origins. They mistakenly assumed it was always a wealthy pursuit because, well, they only looked at expensive private clubs. But this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between what we assume and what actually happened. The myth is that only gentlemen with expensive gear played, but the reality? If we look at church prosecution records from 1583 in St. Andrews, they tell a totally different story. Ordinary citizens, tailors, masons, even young, unpaid apprentices were literally being hauled before the church for playing golf on Sundays. No way they could afford expensive gear. They were out there using cheap, bent sticks, often called shinty sticks, caught from local trees, playing a massive, popular street and churchyard game. And to prove just how genuinely classless this game was on the Scottish links, just listen to this quote from the writer Tobias Smollett in 1766. He wrote, "Of this diversion, the Scots are so fond that when the weather will permit, you may see a multitude of all ranks mingling together." So golf was truly a mass sport. It was a common recreation for everyone, rich and poor alike, all sharing the exact same rough coastal terrain. Moving right along to part 2, formalizing the game. We're talking rules, royals, and the 18-hole standard. So walking through these critical milestones, it's wild to see golf's relationship with authority. In 1457, King James II actually banned the game. Why? Because it was distracting his citizens from their military archery training. Basically, they were golfing instead of preparing for war. But, by 1502, King James IV tried it, absolutely loved it, and gave it his royal endorsement. Fast forward to 1744, and the Gentlemen Golfers of Leith formed the very first club to set up a competition with actual written rules. And then, critically, in 1764, St. Andrews established the 18-hole standard. Before this, courses had all sorts of random numbers of holes, but St. Andrews cemented the 18-hole round that every single golfer on Earth still plays today. All right, part 3, the equipment revolution, and how technology democratized the fairways. Now, you absolutely cannot understand the spread of golf without understanding the evolution of the gear. The physical equipment literally dictated how the game was played. We've got to start with the feathery. For centuries, this was the standard golf ball. It was a delicate, incredibly labor-intensive ball made by stuffing wet goose feathers tightly into a leather pouch, which then expanded and hardened as it dried. Because it took hours to make just one ball, they were prohibitively expensive. We're talking costing more than the clubs themselves. Plus, they maxed out at about 150 yards of distance and were completely ruined if it rained. Now, what's really interesting here is how a single accessible material completely blew the game wide open for the masses. Enter the gutty in 1848. Made from the dried rubber-like sap of the Malaysian sapodilla tree, this ball was a total game changer. It was durable, it was waterproof, and most importantly, it was cheap to mass produce. Suddenly, you didn't have to be wealthy to afford a round of golf. And players quickly realized that actually nicking the ball made it fly further and truer, which, believe it or not, is exactly what gave birth to the dimples we see on golf balls today. After the gutty, ball technology advanced incredibly rapidly. By 1898, the Haskell rubber core ball added massive distance, jumping up to about 250 yards. And today, of course, we have multi-layer solid core balls optimized for crazy spin and speed. But here's the so what of all this data. Every single leap in ball technology fundamentally changed course design. As the balls flew further, architects were literally forced to build longer, much more strategic courses just to keep up with driving distances. And, as you'd expect, club evolution totally followed suit. We go from early handcrafted wooden longnoses all the way to today's AI-designed carbon fiber marvels.
A massive turning point was the legalization of steel shafts in 1924, replacing that fragile hickory wood. Then, jumping to the late 20th century, the titanium metal wood revolution allowed for those massive, oversized drivers. The logic here is pretty straightforward. Modern game improvement irons and massive titanium drivers provide extreme forgiveness. They were engineered specifically to make the game easier and a lot more enjoyable for the everyday amateur.
This brings us to Part 4, Trailblazing Women in Golf. Queens, champions, and breaking barriers. It's absolutely crucial to highlight the pivotal yet often overlooked role of women in shaping both the amateur and professional game. Women's golf actually has incredibly deep roots. Back in the 1500s, Mary Queen of Scots was an avid player. Jumping to 1811 in Musselburgh, Scotland, we see the very first recorded women's tournament. It was actually held for local fishermen's wives, and the winning prizes were a creel, which is a type of basket, and a shawl. From those super humble beginnings, we reach the founding of the LPGA in 1950, which paved the way for modern phenoms like Lydia Ko, who in 2015 became the youngest golfer of either gender to ever reach world number 1. And hey, here's a fantastic little historical fact to connect the 16th century directly to the terminology we use right now. Mary Queen of Scots actually coined the term caddy. It derived from the French word cadets, which was how she referred to her French military aides who carried her clubs around for her. Pretty cool, right? Now, I really want you to focus on this number, 82. That is the staggering total of amateur and professional wins achieved by the legendary Babe Zaharias. But her impact went so far beyond just winning women's events. In 1945, she daringly competed in 3 PGA Tour events against the men. And get this, she incredibly made the cut in all 3. Just a true pioneer who completely shattered ceilings. Building on that massive momentum, the LPGA was founded in 1950 by 13 prominent female golfers, including Babe Zaharias. Their first season featured a modest $50,000 total prize fund stretched across 14 tournaments. So the crucial point here is that this incredibly humble beginning laid the exact financial and organizational groundwork for today's multi-million-dollar global tours and youth phenoms. And finally, Part 5, a global phenomenon, exporting the links to the world. So how exactly did a game played on a few sandy Scottish coastlines explode to reach literally every corner of the earth? Well, the answer lies heavily in the Victorian era. Golf spread like wildfire throughout the 1800s. The sheer might of the British Empire, combined with the Industrial Revolution and the massive expansion of the railways, rapidly planted golf clubs globally. British expats and military personnel established clubs from Bangalore, India in 1820, all the way to Cape Town, South Africa in 1885. But, to have a truly comprehensive view, we absolutely must acknowledge that golf is a rich tapestry of European heritage. Historical texts, including Dutch golf history records, highlight early Dutch traditions of a stick-and-ball game called kolf. It was the cross-cultural merging of these European mainland traditions with the unique Scottish links terrain that eventually evolved into the massive worldwide industry we recognize today. So, bringing it all together, the core narrative of our explainer today is that golf is so much more than what it appears on the surface. And understanding this transformation really matters to our appreciation of the game today. It morphed from Scottish tailors and apprentices hitting pebbles over sand dunes on their day off, using bent branches, into a highly engineered, globally inclusive sport that literally pushes the limits of modern material science. And that leaves us with a final provocative thought to ponder. We've seen how every single piece of equipment, from the gutty ball to steel shafts, radically shifted how this game is played and who gets to play it. So, from those humble Scottish tailors swinging bent branches to today's AI-designed titanium clubs, how will technology change the spirit of the game next? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and keep exploring.